Thank you.
Do you want me to like?
All right, guys. So I'm gonna do some stand-up comedy. I don't know if anyone's watched stand-up comedy. I'm gonna tell some jokes. No one dies at the end. Although, if I do bomb, I will be dying inside. This is going to be a choose your own adventure comedy set. You get to decide how I start my comedy set. By applause, do you guys want me to talk about my dad? No one wants to hear about my dad. Who wants to hear about me being a dad myself?
Oh yeah.
And the last option is, who wants to hear about my gigantic penis? The audience has spoken. There's a clear winner here. Although I want to tell you about the downside risk of having a gigantic penis. When I was a little boy, all I wanted to do was be a pole vaulter. And then one day, at the track and field meet, I realized the pole was literally a cock blocker. And I know some of you don't get that reference, so I suggest you Google it. And by Googling it, I'm talking about Google my large, gigantic penis. It's all over the internet. You're welcome. I do have a name for my gigantic penis. I call it Jagmeet Singh. Like Jagmeet, my penis is brown. I got some hairy balls that surround my penis. And 90% of the country are envious of what I got. So after the pole vaulting career didn't work out, my life kind of descended into mediocrity, which meant that I became a dad. You know, the weird thing about being a dad is I don't like kids. And every day I find something that I like less about my kids. Like, my kids have terrible social skills. They don't even try and make friends. I feel like I'm always 5-year-old matchmaker. Like, I was at the park with my kids and there was a boy named Timmy. I said, "Hey Timmy, do you like grilled cheese sandwiches? Like my son Narayan?" And Timmy's like, "I live on grilled cheese sandwiches." And then he smiles and I see the remnants of his grilled cheese sandwich in his mouth. And then I said, "Timmy, my son Narayan has just learned how to spell 4 and 5-letter words." And Timmy's like, "Yes, I can read 4 and 5-letter words. I'm practically Margaret Atwood." I know many of you don't know who Margaret Atwood is, and Timmy's an impressive 5-year-old. And then Timmy turns to me and he's like, "Does your son Narayan like the smell of his own farts?" And I said, "No, Timmy, but I do." And so Timmy and I are friends. He couldn't make it. He's got a 7 o'clock bedtime. What I'm trying to say, Black Rose Whiskey Club, is we need more male role models, kind of like me. I am the 7-time winner of the Best Dad Ever. I did not bring the mugs or the t-shirts. I left it at home because I live with modesty and humility. I get a lot of that from having refugee parents. My parents came here 40 years ago from a place called Sri Lanka. And when they came here, they didn't have a lot of money. But that all changed when my dad's business took off. So I take you to the summer of 2000. My mom, there's my mom, she's been married to my dad for 51 years. I know, impressive. I know there was a time where she loved my dad deeply, but in the 42 years that I've been around, I've seen none of that love. In fact, one of the earliest memories that I have of my mom and dad's relationship is them having an argument and then my mom turning to my sister and I and saying, "You know, the biggest regret that I have in my life was marrying your dad." And then she listed off 10 dudes that she should have married instead of my dad. I know, the trauma. Thankfully, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I have a large and gigantic penis. Usually the therapy sessions go like this. I'm sobbing uncontrollably to the therapist about my childhood, and in the last 5 minutes, she tells me to drop my pants and show her what I'm grateful for. I know I'm a whore, but times are tough in the Scott Moe economy. I'm only kidding because my therapist is my wife, and I am sobbing uncontrollably. And that's because we're having long and excruciating conversations about why it's all my fault. I have a sister. She was 23 at the time, and we saw the first glimpses of her mental health issues. And I'm not going to make any jokes about that. It's something that we've been grappling with as a family ever since then. And then there was me. I was 18 at the time. I had a red Dodge Neon. It was my first car. I also had a crew in high school. We were called the DSOBs, the Darker Shades of Brown. But we believed in diversity, so we had an Asian guy in our crew as well. His name was Roger Gang. But we didn't have the most important demographic for any teenage crew. There were no girls in our crew. But that was all going to change in the summer of 2000. I had the Dodge Neon, I had the DSOBs by my side, and I had the BJE, the Big Jack Made Energy. But my dad comes home from work one day, and he says he's going to take the whole summer off, which was an unsettling start to the conversation, because we did not want to be poor again. We did not want to shop at No Frills. But then my dad drops the bomb. He's like, we're going to go to Disney World for the entire summer. And my mom has always been a master at reading the room. She turns to my sister and I and says, see, this is why I shouldn't have married your dad. And then she proceeds to list off 15 guys that she should have married instead of my dad. You really have to see the pictures. There is like my dad saying, we're in the happiest place in the world. And my mom and my sister and I saying, no one is happy with that. And you know, one of the cool things about being a parent is that you finally get to forgive your own parents for the shitty childhood you had. And that's what I've been able to do recently after becoming a parent. Let me tell you a little bit about my dad. My dad grew up in a small town in northern Sri Lanka called Alavardi. And when he was 19 years old, he looked around and everyone was marrying their cousins. And he had some butt ugly ass cousins. And so he's like, I'm gonna leave this shitty place. So he went to Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka at the time. And it was this like booming metropolis. And that's where he met my mom. And then in the early 80s, there was a civil war that broke out in Sri Lanka. And he got grazed by a bullet. And he's like, we gotta leave. So they moved to Canada. And my dad worked his ass off. And 10 to 15 years, he became one of the top life insurance agents in the entire country. So I tell you that story because the most remarkable part of that story is my dad never told me that story. It was my mom. And she has never acknowledged anything about my dad. Although she did enjoy telling me about those butt ugly ass cousins. Thank you guys.